So this is the job of the tiger, to control the population of herbivores so that the forest can flourish and survive. Variations enable an organism to survive under the constraints of limited food and space. Limited food and space creates struggle for existence. Vestigial organs was very well explained by Lamarck. Lamarck said that vestigial organs have become vestigial due to use and disuse theory. Now we will start about Darwin's theory of natural selection. This is the most popular and the most important theory of biological evolution till date. As I had discussed earlier, Darwin went on a global mission, a global voyage on his famous ship, the HMS Beagle, to understand and record the variations and the varieties of different life forms in different kinds of ecosystems and habitats all across the planet, and their interrelationship with one another. So, Darwin, in his theory of natural selection, said that nature only selects animals with those variations or those characteristics that are best suited to survive in that particular environmental condition. And in order for variation to arise in a population, Darwin gave the following postulates. First should be rapid multiplication. An animal should have the ability to grow and multiply rapidly and to produce as much offspring they can, in order to ensure that the population is a large population. And when the population is a large population, then only we can get large number of variations. And this was proved by Lederberg's replica experiment using penicillin and penicillin resistant bacteria. Lederberg cultured a vast colony of Escherichia coli bacteria or E. coli bacteria, and he gave small doses of penicillin. Penicillin is an antibiotic, as you all know, and as a result of that, most of the bacteria in the colony died off. But some of them managed to survive a bit longer. They eventually died, but they managed to survive a bit longer. Lederberg cultured those long-lasting bacteria, again gave penicillin, and the results of that experiment was that Lederberg showed or observed that the long-lasting bacteria from the first generation died off, but some of them or some of their progenies managed to survive a bit longer. And when Lederberg repeated this experiment for a number of times, he observed that all of the bacteria in that colony have become resistant to penicillin. So, the penicillin resistance was already there in the population. Those variants with penicillin resistance were actually present in the population. But that variation did not get expressed because there was no penicillin, there was no environmental pressure. The moment penicillin was introduced, they were exposed to that environmental pressure. Only those managed to survive and reproduce which had that inbuilt resistance. And the inbuilt resistance occurred due to mutation. Mutation is the source of variation in the population. Next struggle for existence. Every organism has to struggle in its environment. It has to struggle to adapt. It has to struggle to grow. It has to struggle to capture food, to defend its territory, to reproduce. And to reproduce, it has to struggle to find a mate. And then it has to struggle to make sure its offspring survive. This struggle is common in all animals, including humans. We also have to struggle for everything in life. Na? We need to struggle to get good marks, to build a good career, to build a family, to sustain that family. We need to struggle. Similarly, animals also have to struggle in order to survive, because there is very limited food and space. The earth has a fixed geographical area and it has a very small habitable zone. Every place on earth is not suitable for life. So in a fixed area, there is an even smaller area in which animals have to fit in and survive. And in that smaller area, not everything is edible. So in that smaller area, there is even smaller quantities of food which all the animals have to share, which all the animals have to compete with each other against different species and within the same species, interspecific competition and intraspecific competition, in order to utilize that resource, in order to occupy that space so that they can survive. So limited food and space gives rise to struggle for existence. And this struggle for existence was very well explained by Gauss in his theory of competitive exclusion. What did Gauss say? Gauss say that two species, if they occupy the same niche, cannot coexist together. Now, what is a niche? Well, the place in which an animal survives or lives, like a tiger lives in the forest, that is its habitat. The habitat of a tiger is a forest. But what does a tiger do in the forest? It hunts other animals. It keeps the population of herbivores in check, in control, so that the forest is not eaten away by the herbivores. So this is the job of the tiger, to control the population of herbivores so that the forest can flourish and survive. This job or profession of the animal is the niche. So Gauss said, when two animals or two animal species, they do the same activity, they perform the same activity, the same role in the same habitat, they cannot survive together. That is why you won't find lions and tigers in the same forest area. Because lions, like tigers, do the same thing. Now, if they are put in the same forest, they will compete for the same number of prey items, they will compete for the same limited space, and this will bring them in direct competition, and one of them will kill off the other, so only one will survive. So this was explained by Gauss in his theory of competitive exclusion, that when there is limited food and space, there is struggle for existence. And when there is struggle for existence, if two species perform the same duties in the ecosystem, one of them will be eliminated. Which one will survive and which one will be eliminated is a result of natural selection. That animal will survive which has the essential variations, which makes it more suitable in that environment. That animal will survive and all other animals will be eliminated. This is known as survival of the fittest. By fittest, we don't mean physical strength only. We mean all the morphological, physiological, anatomical characteristics, all the features that an organism possesses, so that they can survive and produce viable offsprings. And those features arise due to mutations, and mutations create variations in the population, and those variants with all those useful features that are custom made to survive in that particular environmental condition survive, they are considered to be fit as they are the only ones who can reproduce and carry on the population while the others perish. So this is known as survival of the fittest. And when the fit survive, they reproduce, and when they reproduce, they pass on all the useful variations that are encoded in their genome, not in the genome of the somatic cells, but in the genome of the gametes. All the useful characters, all the characters that make a species fit are encoded in the gametes, in the DNA of the gametes. They reproduce and are passed on to the next generation. So the next generation, from the moment they are born, they carry all those useful variations, the inheritance of useful variations. And inheritance of the useful variations separates these variants from the ancestral population, and gradually as time progresses, only those who have inherited the useful variations can reproduce. So there will be a time when only the population will contain the variants with the useful population and all others will perish, all others will become competitively eliminated. So the genetic makeup of the ancestral population has been changed. The ancestral population had 10 variations, and now the current population has only 2 or 3 variations. So a new population has risen, which is completely different from the ancestral population, and the new population is reproductively isolated from the ancestral populations. Hence, we can say that a new species has been formed. So rapid multiplication creates variations. Variations enable an organism to survive under the constraints of limited food and space. Limited food and space creates struggle for existence. Struggle for existence ensures competition. Competition results in survival of the fittest. Survival of the fittest results in reproduction and inheritance of the useful variations in the next generation, and all these variations accumulate as the generation progresses, giving rise to a new population of new species, which is completely different from the ancestral species or the ancestral population. Okay, this can be demonstrated by a famous observation made by 3 British scientists, R.A. Fisher, E.B. Ford and H.B.D. Kettlewell. In the city of Manchester, the famous city having 2 very famous football clubs, some of you may be supporting them. So Manchester was the first city or one of the first cities in England to witness the Industrial Revolution. Now, prior to the Industrial Revolution, there was very less carbon emission, and in Manchester there was a species of peppered moth. Peppered moth means their wings were spotted or peppered with dots, called Biston betullaria. Now, Biston betullaria had 2 subspecies. One was Biston betullaria carbonaria and one was Biston betullaria typica. Carbonaria was dark shaded and these were lighter shaded. lighter shaded. Okay. Biston betullaria carbonaria was darker in color and Biston betullaria typica was lighter in color. So, what happened? Prior to industrial revolution, the oak trees near Manchester had a greyish colored bark, in which the Biston betullaria typica was well camouflaged, but carbonaria was not. So initially, the population had more number of typica species than that of carbonaria species, as when dark shaded carbonaria moths sat on the light colored bark of the oak trees, the birds had a very easy time in picking them off and eating them. So the population prior to industrial revolution had more typica species than carbonaria species. But then industrial revolution came into force and large industries spewed out black smoke from their chimneys, and the carbon from that smoke coated the oak trees and the barks became black. This is known as industrial melanism. The light colored oak trees were covered in the soot or the carbon particles and they turned black. Now what happened? The dark shaded or the dark colored Biston betullaria carbonaria moths became well camouflaged, whereas the light colored Biston betullaria typica moths, they became easily visible and they became easy prey for the birds to feed on. And now what we find is Biston betullaria carbonaria moths occupy 90% of the population and Biston betullaria typica moths occupy only 10% of the population and they are headed for extinction. But if we go for green energy, the industries stop emitting carbon, then gradually the oak trees again will be of lighter colored and this population dynamics will be reversed. Means carbonaria will again start to reduce in numbers and typica will again start to grow in numbers in the population. This is natural selection. This is survival of the fittest. This is competition. Okay. However, there are a lot of criticism to Darwin's theory as well. Darwin, like Lamarck, did the same mistake. He said all the somatic variations are also inherited, which is wrong, as was proven by August Weismann. He also failed to explain living fossils, that is, animals that have remained unchanged since time immemorial. That means the ancestral population and the current living population bears the same physical, biological, morphological, anatomical, physiological features, adaptations and characteristics, like the coelacanth, a marine fish whose scientific name is Latimeria chalumni, like crocodiles, like sharks, like insects. Insects occupy almost every kind of biome, almost every kind of realm, almost every kind of environmental conditions, and they are the most numerous of all animals. So they have the most competitions amongst them, both between different species and between the members of the same species. Yet they have managed to retain their ancestral features, their ancestral variations, and they have not changed a bit for millions and millions of years. So that means they were better suited back then and they are better suited even now. And the characters which the ancestral populations had were so advanced that there was no need to change. So living fossils could not be explained by Darwin's theory, and also presence of vestigial organs could not be explained by Darwin. Vestigial organs was very well explained by Lamarck. Lamarck said that vestigial organs have become vestigial due to use and disuse theory, which means only those organs or those body parts will remain functional, will remain operational, will be inherited as functional and operational only if they are being used vigorously 24/7 by every member of the species. Otherwise, if they are not used by members of the species, they are remaining inactive. They are just sitting idle, not doing anything, not contributing to the survival of the animal. They will lose their functionality. They will lose their usefulness, and they will become vestigial. They will become reduced, rudimentary, and finally they will cease to exist. This has been very beautifully explained by Lamarck, but Darwin failed to explain the existence of the vestigial organs and why they have become vestigial. So this is all that we need to understand about biological evolution and its related theories.